HBCU Talk. And today's topic is hiding behind the mask. And today we had special guest, Alexandra Charles. She's a pastor, entrepreneur, philanthropist. Um, she's just a very special young lady. And you know my
Amen.
sidekick, Brandon Marcus with BMJ Media. And we coming on and we're going to talk about a topic that's going on in the inner cities, and well, not just the inner cities, and throughout the world and throughout life, where people are hiding behind masks, being something that they really are not, just to please a certain group of people, which I call fear motivation. Um,
Mm.
Doing things out of fear just to make people accept. And I'm gonna start off with Brandon. Brandon, me and you had sat down and we talked about this because I it was part of my life experience growing up, trying to be accepted, doing some things, even growing up in the inner cities. I moved in like okay, I was from the first grade on up. I never got a B in school. I got all A's
Right.
until I got to the ninth grade. And when I got to the ninth grade,
Oh,
I wanted to be like everybody else. So I grew up on High Street. I went and then I moved over to the Weequahic section, and I was attending. And my grandmother used to call me her genius. And I wound up watching everybody hustle, and I started doing it. And
Mm.
I come from a grandmother and a grandfather, a father and mother who despised hustling. And I did it because I was just trying to be accepted
Mm.
and wanted to be a part of the group. And I found out that a lot of the guys that was around me that was doing it, and the ones who were successful, was also smart
Yeah.
and was very good in the classroom. But we veered into that lifestyle because we wanted to be accepted. And I read this, it was this word called osmosis. Like we do things based on how we see things that surround us,
Right.
and we respond to it. So when me and Brandon was having this conversation, and I was like, "Wow, we need to talk about this because this impact me." And listen, I'm a 54-year-old man, and I'm laughing out. I'm saying to myself, like, "Wow, imagine if somebody to pinpoint me hiding behind a mask, doing things like now, like last week conversation, Miss Charles, me and Brandon, we talked about wearing clothes, just dressing a certain way because we wanted to, why am I spending $1,000 for a pair of sneakers and the Nike make the best sneakers in the world, and their highest pair of sneakers is $250, $300. But it was all about, um, I think it was all about trying to be accepted, and and that was a conversation with, and Miss Charles, have you ever experienced anything in the sense of uh, hiding behind the mask and just wanted to be accepted growing up in your life?
growing up, I had some positive parents. They always was telling me, "Hey, you could do it by yourself." I mean, I had cheerleaders, but I think alongside of the cheerleaders, you also have haters. You know what I'm saying? You started competing with your cousins, with your, what I'm saying, family members. You know what I'm saying? Even
Wow,
though
you must know
I
my
didn't have,
family.
yeah.
You must know
I
my
didn't have
family.
that much influence outside. It was mostly in the house. Like, parents compared you to other children. When they start comparing, so now your perception of what is, now you don't even want to tell your faults to your cousins because you felt like you had to take it up a notch because mama said, what I'm saying, you can't be like cousin John because cousin John does this and does that. And so now you're living behind a mask. You're doing the same thing cousin John is doing, but when you're in front of everybody, you wear a mask. you cover it up. And yet, you know that you could have been pulled out of this situation, or even, things like, kiss the bottle. I remember, we had that spin the bottle, kiss the boy, whatever the toy we played. And my mother always says, oh, we were from a little Christian home, so only loose girls play that. No, and daggone well, I was playing the same thing. But when we're front, we put on that mask like we're good Christian girls. You know what I'm saying? And these things could have been, I mean, thank God it didn't take it to the next level, but you don't know. It could have been like, hey, I have a, family member that's very promiscuous. Why? Because sex was never talked about in the house. So you wear a mask like you're always the holiest child ever. But then when you stepped outside, you were something else. And so this is what the stigma of the mask puts. So now you don't know who you are, because you've learned such a young age to put on a
This is a
mask for one
reminder from
thing,
prayer
and then
times.
come in the house,
It is
you're in the
time for
mask for
Martha.
another.
The next prayer in
So
19
that's how,
minutes.
for me, it wasn't as much the
This is
influence
a
on the
reminder from prayer
outside. It
times.
was an
It is time for
influence right
Martha.
in front of
The
my
next
home,
prayer,
in my
Aisha,
own
is in
family,
1 hour
that
and
caused me
19
to do
minutes.
that. I hear some feedback.
Well, Brandon, how about you? I mean, what were some of the experiences you had growing up? Because I think, growing up, I grew up in the inner city. And I don't know how you grew up, but like, have you ever experienced where
Yeah.
you did things?
I experienced that, being a minister's child, being a pastor's child. you know, um, there is a certain standard that you have to live by when you're raised in the church, just like as Alex was saying. When you were raised in the church, or when whatever environment you're in, it begins to shape who you become. And sometimes
Mhm.
that's not always the best representation of who you are, but it's your environment, and we become a part of that environment. So uh, I think, being the little holy boy, you know, that sometimes that is a mask, because we put that on, and that's how we're to present ourselves at all times. But
Amen.
uh, and even though we're trying to live a holy life, sometimes that becomes the mask that we are. And we find that even within the church. And I want to deal with that, is that a lot of people are hiding behind the mask of being a Christian, being religious. And that doesn't define who you are as a person, but they allow that mask. And we do. I was guilty of allowing that mask um, to determine who I was, and to dictate and to define who I was. So lots of
And we
times
start living a lie.
yeah, we do, and we're not operating in a truth. We're not operating in the truth of who we are. So that becomes our identity, and sometimes it could be a false identity, and that's what we're presenting to others. But who we are is somebody differently, or we're living a completely different life.
Right, and the crazy part, and you talked it from as being a Christian. Well, I'm gonna give it on the flip side. Me being a Muslim man, I had experienced that. Like, I'm gonna give you a prime example. I took my Shahada in 2000, no, 1995,
Mhm.
and I used to go to the masjid, and so I used to drink a glass of wine when I be at home. So, so one day, I was out, I was with the brothers, and I wanted to have a beer while we was eating, and they were like, "Brother," and I was like, so, so I didn't even ask for the beer. I was like, I ain't gonna drink no beer because I'm gonna get all this, I'm gonna get all this ruckus. So I was acting like I was the holy and not, like I was the, I was, I was the best Muslim in the world. You know what I mean? And but I knew in the back of my head when I get home, I'm gonna have me a beer. And I and, and so now, so for example, I was working to I was working this weekend with my partner, and he's Muslim, so we're electricians. And the owner, we was working on the basement. The owner said, "Oh, you can have a beer too." And I'm at a point in my life is, yeah, you got to set me where I'm at. You know what I mean? You got to love me where I'm at, and
Amen.
I'm because I'm gonna love
Amen.
you where you at.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I'm gonna have a beer. And my brother looked at me. I said, yo, stop looking at me like that, because I'm gonna have this beer. I'm like, you'd have got me a
That's
couple
right.
years ago. I'd have been not who I want to be. And so I grabbed two of them. So I grabbed two of them, and he started looking at me. And I said, brother, you got to stop looking at me like that. I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? And but I like beer. I like a glass of wine once in a while when I'm out.
Mhm.
And I grew up as an adult experiencing it. And when I was in the church as a young child, um, I watched my sister, and she in the church she was holding it down, and my grandmother was holding it down when my grandmother would get home. She was like, "You better sit your goddamn ass down." And I used to be like, "Grandma, you're a Christian."
Right.
She's like, "I'm a Christian at church, right?" And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So my experience was watching not only myself but
Right.
my grandparents and my parents,
Mhm.
you know, how to, and not being like, this is who I am, and you know, only God can judge me,
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
And that's the truth of it. That we put on these facades and these masks to please who? You know, as if we know that we have our relationship with God and we are being fruitful. I always have to say that because it's important that for us to be who we are, we're supposed to be fruitful. We're supposed to be able to spread love, you know, and love one another, and that's being fruitful. You know, if we're doing positive things in the community, doing positive things, you know, to our family, our friends, and we are what we call an upstanding citizen. You know, I think that those are positive things, but this mask, it keeps us from being able to be who we truly are.
And I think also, coming from a counseling perspective, people don't get healed from their ish because
Ooh,
they've worn the mask so
ooh,
long
really?
that they don't understand the process of it's okay to say I'm angry.
Hmm.
It's okay to say that I am mad, because they don't have that person. They don't have that problem where, no one is talking.
Right,
No one is there to hear them. No one is there to actually deal with their pain. So, guess what? We're at a point where people are not getting healed. Like, I
right,
can't say to you, I have a drug problem because everything is always in the back burner. I can't say to you that I have this or this is going on and that's going on. But at times, that's what happens.
right,
You
right,
know, um, you know, and it's the healing process
right,
does not happen. And so
right.
now you become an angry, you know, black
And it's,
woman, an
and it's a cycle.
angry person. Exactly. Now your children get that anger and that pain. And, no one ever gets healed because this is how we do what we do. And it's such a sad thing because of the
Right,
fact that that bitterness that I felt towards my mama, that I wore this mask and everything like this, it now transcend to my children. It now
mm,
did this, it now did that. And it's so sad because, when I sit with people and counseling them, it's a rooted thing that was been embedded within them that they've worn the mask so well that they don't even see it themselves,
right,
and that's when it becomes a bigger problem.
right, right. You are so right about that, Alex. It does it causes a lot of people fear of not being able to be truthful, not sharing with others. You know, when you're not healed yourself, you know, they always say hurt people. But when you fall into that cycle of wearing this mask and that's all you're doing is covering up. You're covering up hurt, you're covering up pain, you're covering up trauma, you're covering up any type of situation that you've been through, abuse, you know,
so
bullying. A lot of people, they put on this mask and they
so
can be
Brian,
getting whipped at home, by their husband or by their wife, and they're putting on this mask, and women putting on their makeup, covering up what's really going on here and not being healed. So when we go out in public, we're putting on that mask and covering up all this hurt, and we're perpetuating that in relationships, toxic relationships, and workplaces. People get the brunt of what's going on and through our hurt and through our shame and through our pain. So I think we got to come to a place to where it's okay. We got to create a safe place for people to feel like they can be open to share. And that's the thing.
Brandon,
yeah.
I want you to hold that thought, because I'm gonna go to a commercial real quick. All right.
Okay.
Guys, I'm Robert Carpenter, CEO of Civic Group and COO of the Wolf Designers. If you have a child, nephew, niece, or just a child you love, go to BigRobChildrenBooks.com. Buy one of our books, t-shirts, hoodies, and support an underserved child. When you buy something, proceeds go to helping an underserved child. So click on the link and support a child. Hey, Brandon. But Brandon, I was thinking about what you said while we were in commercial break, right? And one of the conversations, I've been looking at the society from abroad. Like the LGBT community has been really pushing their agenda. And so as we was talking about hiding behind the mask, I'm starting to realize is that this community has been hiding themselves from basic life living across the country. So is this one of the reasons you can say that they're pushing their agenda so hard across the country, because so many of them has been hiding and not being who they are for so many years?
I think people are getting to a place. I think people are getting to a place to where they are being more open and more free, and not hiding behind the mask. I think that agenda is coming out, but there's still people that within the LGBT community that still hide behind the mask. I mean, you have men, women, that hide behind the mask and living double lives, and it's affecting relationships. It's affecting, homes.
I think that's something that we covered. We talked about Brandon
right
earlier. It was so funny that you came with that concept, because I was saying that as a single Black woman myself, we keep our men from exposing truth to us, because the Black community will accept. And I'm not talking about other communities, because I'm a Black woman, so I can only speak in the Black community. We accept two women kissing on a TV show, or accept lesbian women. Not that quick that we expect two men holding hands. We think it's not manly. And so then it causes the men to be going underground. You know what I'm saying? So now we're having the down low brothers that's trying to cover up. So then we're getting affected, because we're not causing them to say, hey, not that whether you agree or not, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the mask. You don't give people opportunity to reveal themselves to you. So then you, like Brandon said, that you get into a relationship. Let me tell you, I've met so many white folks that will tell me in a minute, well, I'm bisexual. And they tell you. They don't even wait for you to tell them. They tell you.
Right.
But very rarely you hear Black people say, I'm bisexual. Because it's not accepted within us the way it is accepted in other cultures. You know what I'm saying? So I think that sometimes we cause, not, yes, there are their issues too, but we cause them to stay in that process because of where, we as Black people have maintained that outlook.
Right.
No, you know what? I had to start. You had hit on some points that I had to ask people to forgive me, because when two women kiss on the television, right? To me, it's hot. That's the
See,
highest.
that's what I'm
I'm
saying.
like,
That's
I'm like,
that double standard.
I'm
That's
like,
you
yes.
niggas.
You know
Y'all
what I mean?
fighting.
But when two
Mhm.
guys kiss, I be like,
Right.
yo, turn that shit off. And excuse my language. And and you're right. And the thing is that we're allowing these young gentlemen not to expose themselves to who they are. And regardless if I agree or disagree, I should allow
Exactly.
I should allow an individual to live his life.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I had to learn that in the Obama administration. He explained it that I may not agree with he said my life is about me marrying a woman. He said, but the his constitutional right is what he's fighting for allowing him to be who he chooses to be without somebody putting a gun to his head, taking his life, beating him down, ridiculing them, and exposing them to stuff and the stuff that I've seen the LGBT community, men and women, have been exposed to. And it took, and as a Muslim man, it took me a very, very, very long time to get. Me and Brandon had this conversation. About 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And it was like we we had this conversation, and I had to grow up because when I was working and being an entrepreneur and we was doing business, we ran into gay men who had great personalities and was good people,
Right.
but I had to get over and say that's his life, that's not my life, and
Right.
I could still be his friend, and I could still be cordial, respectful, and honorable to an individual because I've learned if you go to some of the cities, like I'm gonna take like Houston, you go to the Galleria area. It used to be the hood.
Right.
Well, that gay community made that hood look like like it's worth the apartments now are like $2 million, $1 million. Because they went in there and they put a couple of flowers and so and some of our neighbors who got these they take like one of my neighbors, he take care of the grass and put flowers out, and I'd be like, yo, I said, and he be out there doing his thing, and you got to respect him, but he's bringing something to the community
Right.
without bringing harm to a person. You
Right.
just have to respect who he is.
Right.
So I had to learn. I had to learn how to just to respect that person. So
I
that's
think
my.
I
Get
agree
in
with you.
trouble out here with the my shit. That's
Yeah.
my. That's my.
Yeah, Rob.
That's
That
that's
is
my
so,
my wing on it. It's just that we just have to respect people and honor people, regardless if we agree or disagree.
right. And I believe that like you were saying, when we get to that place to where we can respect somebody for just who they are, I think those masks begin to come down. People begin to start operating in their truth. That's a safe place. When you get to a point, like you just said, when you get to a point to where, when you got to the point to where you recognize that they're bringing value and they're not bothering you, they're not doing you any harm, but they are beautifying. When you allow people just to be who they are, you'll find the beauty in just who they are alone, and that's it. Yeah.
And just to tag on to that, I think that we as human beings need to get to the point of acceptance first ourselves. That's the
Right.
problem. When
Yeah.
you have the mask that you wore it so well, then
Mhm.
you become judgmental. I tell folks, whenever you see people trying to control a situation, know that the spirit of fear is what holds them close.
Right.
And so I think that the main thing that people do is control, and when they're controlling in a situation or a person or whatever the atmosphere is that cause you to control, it makes me think, what are you fearful of?
Mm.
What is the thing that you are afraid of? Because control brings about fear.
Oh, that's
And
that's
so sometimes too, some people that come to that point of not accepting somebody else's identity are the main people that's living that double life.
mm, it is.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's Let me tell you, sitting down with people and counseling people, you would be surprised
Mm.
with the people that have sexual issues. It may not be the same sex, but sexual issues that cause them not to accept other people and their sexual desires. So definitely you have to look at why people are so fearful of certain things and why they're trying to control certain things is because they themselves are not comfortable of who they are and their own identity. So they
Well,
wear a mask and they expecting that to happen with other people.
well, let me ask you this then. In the black community, I'm noticing that with the Jim Crow laws, the um, the um, the lack of education, the underserved communities, um, and then we got television, right? And we know television projects a message and an image to our community that this is how successful people live, right? And then we learn later on that success is not really based on finances; it's based on pure happiness that sits in the soul. So, how do we take a whole community who is their message is directed through hip hop, economics, um, fashion, right? And make them say, hey, I don't need to be that. I could be who I am, right? Because from the time you're born, television controls the image and the message in our community. Not only is it controlled in the media, it's controlled in our music, right? And we all know who control these networks.
Right.
It's not people that look like us. So how do we take an initiative or and then I'm gonna go back to say this too. Like Miss Charles, you came from a mother and a father who taught you those life skills, right? Well, how about that kid who didn't have that? He would live his life behind multiple masks, trying to figure it out. And then by the time he figured it out, sometimes some of these men are 45, 54, and 60 years old and just too tired to impact the community because they've been suckered for so many years. How do we change that narrative in our community? Anybody can
For
anybody can
me,
jump in.
I would say, how I would change the narrative is how I treat black men. Sometimes it's with, if you're talking about a man or a person, sometimes it's what we say to people that will change their narrative. Because if
Okay,
you
what
always say all black men are this or all white women are that, you know what I'm saying? We change by how we have to first change ourselves. That's all I can do is change me first. Go ahead, you're about to say something.
what I was looking for. I'm gonna just tell you what I was looking for
Okay.
in this
Hmm.
question to the answer.
Okay.
I was looking to say I know that I have life skills, and I understand. I
Hmm.
was taught by a mother and a father and a grandfather and a great grandfather that listen, man, you're a carpenter. All my life, I was told you're a carpenter. That's my last name, Robert Carpenter. My uncle name is Robert Carpenter. My father name is Lester Carpenter. My other uncle name is William Carpenter and Benji Carpenter, Kurt Carpenter, and we was nothing but a bunch of carpenters. And we was taught that if you're a carpenter, you're gonna be somebody, right? But
Okay.
there's a black boy out there and a black girl out there who hasn't been told that.
Right.
And how do our community take on this task to make our young people say, I'm somebody?
Right.
And what are the things that we can put in place as a community to make those changes because I can. It's easy for me to say I can do because my daughter, my 14-year-old, oh, she knows she's somebody because every
Right.
time I see her, and you know her, Brandon,
Right.
I tell her you are somebody,
Definitely.
and she carries. If you look at this little 14-year-old girl, she carries herself because her father and her mother is saying you're somebody,
Right.
and her sister and her brother, and you know what I mean. So and
Right.
for,
And
but if you don't have that,
right. I think it starts with
but
changing the content. And I would encourage my brothers and my sisters that are rappers to start speaking more positive because it starts there. When you hearing bitches and hoes and niggas and dogs and all this kind of stuff, that's what young people are listening to. And we have to change the message. As long as that dollar is out there and is being spent and is making people rich by shouting those things, it's not positive. A lot, and I'm not. There's nothing wrong with rap. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with rap, but I think that the message that's being sent out is not positive, and it's causing our youth to continue to go in that cycle, and that's all that they see. If that's why they hide behind masks because they're not able to live out what's being presented in content that we watch and in content that we hear. So that's the kind of stuff that's feeding us. So when we get to a place to where we start changing the narrative, when we talk about changing the narrative, we got to go all the way out. That means changing the content and controlling the content. That means if we know that the people that's in charge is not our color, you know, that's making that money available because they are. When we stand up and we take a change and decide within our community to make a change and do it with one accord, we can't do nothing in unity. We have to get to a place to where we're unified and where we have people that have that platform to say, hey, this is not positive and this is what this is creating. Is this what we want to continue? And it's creating a cycle. It's creating that cycle. So when we get to a point to where we create a place where it's safe to say, hey, what we're hearing is not good, and people not get upset because that's affecting their dollar and affecting their pockets and affecting the Maybach that they have or the Rolls Royce that they have in Beverly Hills or in Atlanta or in New York or wherever. That kind of stuff. When we get to a place to where we stop saying, hey, and when we get to a place to say enough is enough, then that will make some positive change. It might sound harsh and it might sound hard, but it's the reality of it. And
It's like a drug dealer.
conversations like this need to continue to be had, and it needs to expand far beyond a Rob, a Brandon, or an Alexandra.
I also want to say that we know until we take our dollar and circulate it back into the community and start controlling the message and the narrative in media, radio, and all those places, that we will have a hard time wrestling our young people minds away from the narrative that's being positioned out there in our community. And this is why this is why I tell my boys, and I tell young black boys when they go to college, I say college is about certificates. Whoever got the best, the biggest certificate is the one who they're going to look at. So if you got a BS degree, they're going to look at a guy with a master's degree. If you got a master's degree and a guy walks in with a doctorate degree, he's going to get more conversation than you get because he has the doctorate degree. And those are just 3 certificates of higher learning, right? Mm-hmm. But the key factor I tell young black men is that, and girls, is to take that education, create the foundation of a job, and become very wealthy. Because I have yet to see a black activist change our community. I seen them get them up in uproar. I seen them have everybody running down the street and marching and screaming "Kumbaya," but I have yet to change the narrative, because when the storm calms, everything goes back to the same. Now look at George Floyd. George Floyd was set. They sat on his neck for 8 minutes or more, 9 minutes. Where's the storm? It done calmed down, and everybody went back to what? To just living their life.
Right.
And when is the last time you thought about George Floyd? When somebody bring him up. So what I'm saying to black men and black women, that we have to become wealthy so we can put our money into institutions, and we can build institutions, create the message, and create the narrative. And so on that note, I'm gonna give Miss Charles an opportunity to say something to lead with the community, and then Brandon, I'm gonna let you say something, and then we're gonna end this for the night. And I ask everybody to tune in on Tuesdays at 7:30. Well, hopefully we can bring Miss Charles back, because I love her energy,
Yes.
And the smile, and
Thank you.
and Brandon said Brandon told me, he said you're gonna love her, and yeah,
Oh,
she just embraced
thank
her
you.
with her charm. So
Yeah.
Miss Charles, if you want to say something to the listening community, what would you like to say in reference
I would
of
like
what
to
we
say
talked about?
that, each one of us can make the difference. And we could start with first ourselves. Let's find out the mask that we hold so close to our faces. And let's deal with that first. And then we can look at somebody else, because we're so quick to point the finger at somebody else's mask, but we don't look at our own mask. So to start off, let's start off with our mask first. That's what I would leave with everyone.
It's on you, Brandon.
All right. Identity is important to everyone. I believe our identity is created when we're like 5. We begin to start coming into ourselves and who we are as a person. And those things in our environment, the references, the experiences around us, it shapes who we are. And sometimes we hide behind those masks. But I want to encourage my brothers and my sisters uh, to live in your truth, and begin to start speaking to someone that you can feel safe with. We need to really begin to start having those conversations, hard conversations, uh, and really being honest and being truthful to who we are, because our identity gives people authority and gives people access to our lives. So if you got to take the mask off if you want to have somebody that's really rooting for you. So my brothers and my sisters, continue to create positive content that is uplifting and that is empowering and that's inspiring and that's restoring to our community, because that's the only way we'll be able to get past the hurt and the trauma that we've gone through and live beyond the mask.
All right, again,
I like that.
every Tuesday night we'll be coming here to HBCU Talk, and you guys know me. Um, they call me Big Rob, and my initiative is to push the agenda to another level. And here at HBCU means historical Black colleges and universities. And what I do is I travel around the country selling children books to raise money to support the 107 historical Black colleges across the country. There is in 1816, where one of the first historical Black colleges was developed. It was because the inability, or white America, or the system did not allow us to educate ourselves. So we had to create our own institutions. So what I do is I always have a panel on Tuesday night to talk about various different things that's going on in the Black community. And my attitude towards this topic tonight is that we have to start becoming more self-sufficient. We have to educate ourselves at our universities, and we have to take our resources and recirculate back in the community. And when we do that, then we become self-sufficient. We are now a needy community. We are a handout community. We are a community that that is accepting, the welfare, the Section 8, and we have to get away from that, and we have to build our community and better ourselves and better our children. So again, this is Big Rob, and I thank you guys for listening, and then tune in on next week when we'll have another discussion with this same panel. And thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I'm Robert Carpenter, CEO of Civic Group and COO of the Wolf Designers. If you have a child, nephew, niece, or just a child you love, go to BigRobChildrenBooks.com. Buy one of our books, t-shirts, hoodies, and support an underserved child. When you buy something, proceeds go to helping an underserved child. So click on the link and support a child.
Me like flypaper, neighbor. Slow down, love, please chill, drop the paper. Remember them niggas from the hill up in Brownsville that you rode dice?
Hello guys.